Dear international students, it gives me great pleasure to welcome you here at MGIMO University. First of all, I congratulate you on the successful completion of the entrance exams of the admission procedures that you've gone through, and I welcome you here as the full-fledged members of the MGIMO community. I am sure that you will spend here unforgettable minutes, moments, years, months of successful studies, that you will become a really important and integral part of the tightly knit MGIMO family, and you will join in this wonderful adventure of going along this journey of becoming a true global citizen, promoting the cosmopolitan values of peace, cooperation and friendship. I hope that this first glimpse of what MGIMO life is all about will explain to you in greater detail what wonderful experiences you will accumulate while here. Welcome to MGIMO. I hope to see you very soon in person.
MGIMO University, Moscow State Institute of International Relations, is one of the top universities in Russia, Central and Eastern Europe, as well as a public institution and think tank. MGIMO University was the first in Russia to open a dual diploma program with a foreign university, French Sciences Po. Today, MGIMO University offers educational programs for undergraduates and postgraduates in 18 areas of study, MBA and executive MBA programs, and pre-university tutorials. It has a unique language training in 53 foreign languages, a Guinness World Record for the largest number of languages taught at a university. The university has more than 30 dual or triple degree programs with the leading universities of Europe and America. Undergraduate and postgraduate programs in English, French, Italian and German. The university structure comprises 13 schools, a lyceum, a pre-university professional training college and a business school. MGIMO University schools deal with a wide range of areas including international relations and regional studies, politics, governance, diplomacy, world economy, law, journalism, foreign trade and management, energy affairs, linguistics, and environmental studies. The university faculty represents more than 1,000 professors and teachers, including about 20 members of the Russian Academy of Sciences, about 250 doctors habilitators, and more than 700 PhDs. Today, there are about 10,000 students at MGIMO University. International students account for 16% of the total number of students. Over the years, more than 60,000 students have become MGIMO University graduates, including more than 12,000 foreign citizens from all over 80 countries. The university has a unique alumni association which numbers more than 30,000 people and 34 alumni clubs. MGIMO University graduates hold high-ranking position on the world stage. Among MGIMO University graduates, there are presidents, foreign ministers, prime ministers, and ambassadors of Russia and other countries. MGIMO University alumni are also well known as leaders of international companies in various sectors. Moscow, the capital of Russian Federation, is the largest city of this country with a population of over 12 million people and over 18 with the closest suburbs. Moscow is one of the most ancient cities in Russia. Its history dates back to the 12th century. The city was first mentioned in Russian chronicles, yet in 1147. It developed to become the main city of the country by the 15th century, and ever since has been the center of everything here. It is the country's political center, the place where the president lives and works. Russian parliament resides, and all political rallies and meetings take place. Moscow is business and financial center. Most big Russian companies have their headquarters or affiliates in Moscow. Most countries' banks are in Moscow, and plenty of famous foreign companies and banks have their affiliates here. Nearly all countries have their embassies represented in Moscow. The city is the country's cultural center as well. We have as many theaters, concert halls, and of course museums as nowhere else in Russia. Moscow is the center of education in Russia too. Nearly all most prestigious universities of the country are situated here. This is not the center in one respect only. Russia, being the largest country in the world, is located in 11 time zones. Moscow is in the second one, so it is not a geographical center of the country. Moreover, it is not even the center of the country's European part. It is closer to the western borders. The size of the city is enormous. It makes 1,000 square kilometers within its boundary highway and exceeds 2,500 if we take into consideration its new territories, which were officially annexed to Moscow in the southwest about 10 years ago and now are being rapidly developed. We can say that we now stand at the highest elevation point of Moscow, an area called Sparrow Hills. There is a general belief that Moscow stands on 7 hills, like Rome, and Sparrow Hills are the highest that we have within the city limits. Nowadays, this area is well known for Moscow State University, which is located here. It is the oldest and the biggest university in Russia, over 40,000 students, and it's said to have the largest campus in the world. We are at the natural observation platform, Sparrow Hills. It provides with the most spectacular panoramic view of Moscow. You can see nearly the whole city from here, having only about 1/10 of its southwestern part, behind you. The main university building, which is the highest out of 7 Gothic-style skyscrapers built under Stalin at the late 1940s, early 50s, and stands at the city's highest point, can be seen very well not only from this place but from many parts of Moscow, being one of the most famous city's landmarks. Enjoying the view, we can find many remarkable spots of the city, including the most modern part of Moscow, Moscow City, the cluster of skyscrapers to the left of the panorama. Besides offices of many famous companies, it features residential, shopping, and entertainment areas. The skyscrapers all have different names, configuration, and height. The one of the twisting shape to the right is called Evolution Tower, and its shape symbolizes DNA. Then between the 2 big red and white chimneys is Ostankinskaya TV Tower. Built in the late 1960s, it was the highest freestanding structure in the world, about 540 meters. but for a few years only. Later a higher tower was built in Canada, in Toronto, and nowadays there are many more higher ones in the east. You see a white structure topped with a little square tower. It is the house of Russian government. The grounds of the biggest Russia's stadium, Luzhniki, stretch along the opposite side of the Moskva River. The feature is a big sports arena, which is for football, a smaller sports arena, which is an ice rink, gyms, a big swimming pool with an aqua park, and outdoor sports grounds with outdoor pools. The round structure with a glass roof is the big sports arena of Luzhniki Sports Complex. It was the main venue for the 22nd Olympics that took place in the Soviet Union, mostly in Moscow in 1980, and for the World Cup that Russia hosted in 2018. The arena, built in 1956, was reconstructed, modernized and enlarged for the World Cup, and now its capacity is over 82,000 people. Great Ivan's Bell Tower, which is in the Kremlin, is behind the big sports arena of Luzhniki. The Academy of Science, a high-rise white structure with an unusual upper part, and all Stalin's Gothic-style skyscrapers, which were meant to form this unique Moscow skyline with their spires, can all be seen from this spot. Looking around, one can easily notice how green the city of Moscow is. It can boast having over 90 parks and green zones of different size, which help to maintain the air pretty clean. Muscovites often refer to three largest forest parks of the city as green lungs of Moscow. The exhibition of achievements of national economy is a permanent general-purpose trade show and amusement park in Moscow. Between 1991 and 2014, it was also called the All Russia Exhibition Center. It is a state joint stock company. VDNH is located in Ostankino district of Moscow, less than a kilometer from Ostankino Tower. Cosmonauts Alley and the worker and kolkhoz woman statue are situated just outside the main entrance to VDNH. It also borders Moscow Botanical Garden and a smaller Ostankino Park. And in recent years, the three parks served as a united park complex. The exhibition center was built in the era of Joseph Stalin. The main planner was Vyacheslav Oltarzhevsky, who planned a central avenue with fountains, small roads and a large square facing the central pavilion at the end of the avenue. A statue of Vladimir Lenin used to stand in the front of the pavilion. In the central square, there is a big fountain called the Friendship of Peoples. Designed in the shape of an octagon, the fountain was created to glorify the peoples of the Soviet Union. There is another fountain called the Stone Flower, facing the Ukraine Pavilion. There is a smaller square facing the Space Pavilion, in the center of which stands a Tupolev Tu-154 aircraft, placed there in the 1960s after the Pavilion of Agricultural Machinery became the Cosmos Pavilion. The northern area of the site is an area shared between the exhibition center and the Botanic Garden of the nearby Russian Academy of Sciences. In it, there are agricultural pavilions and estate pools with vegetation, including Maturin's garden and the Golden Spike fountain. All the fountains in the center are covered with gold. In addition, the side houses, cafes, theater pavilions, as well as a church built after the fall of the Soviet Union. One of the most beautiful architectural ensembles of the city is Novodevichy, New Maiden's Convent, founded by a father of a famous Russian Tsar, Ivan the Terrible, in the early 16th century as a retreat for women of royal origin. It remained the richest convent in Russia before the middle of the 18th century. Then St. Petersburg became the capital and a new convent was built for such a purpose there. The lives of 14 women of royal origin are closely connected with the history of the convent. Two daughters-in-law of Ivan the Terrible, Peter the Great's first wife, and his half-sister Sophia are amongst them. The charming convent's wall dates back to the 17th century. It is a bright example of Moscow Baroque style, and the big white cathedral with 1 gold and 4 silver domes is the oldest structure preserved in the convent, dating back to the first half of the 16th century. Since 1993, it is an active convent again, having about 40 women living there. The convent is a UNESCO site. The bank of this lake is the best place to enjoy looking at the convent. Some locals like to call it a swan lake and believe that the place inspired the famous Russian composer Tchaikovsky to create one of his famous pieces of music, the Swan Lake. Swans did live on the lake before the 1950s, but now one can only find plenty of ducks on it. Having made a short walk along the bank, we find an interesting sculptural composition of bronze ducks. It is a present to the city of Moscow from Barbara Bush. The composition represents characters of American children's story Make Way to Ducklings and is a near replica of a sculptural composition in Boston. We are on the bridge across the Moskva River. This is the biggest but not the only river in the city. In fact, there are nearly 30 rivers and ponds in Moscow, but many of the rivers were either completely or partially impiped in the 20th century and now flow mostly under the ground. The city was founded on a high bank of the navigable river Moskva and called by its name. The river is not very long, 500 kilometers, and for nearly 70 kilometers the river makes its way through Moscow, making lots of turns and bends, and view to it can be seen in many parts of the city. In the 1930s, the Moskva River was connected to the Volga River by a canal. Using the canal and Russian waterways, it is possible to reach 5 different seas sailing from Moscow. The canal made Moscow the port of 5 seas. This impressive white church, Christ the Saviour's Cathedral, is the main church of the country. Built originally in the 19th century to commemorate the victory over Napoleon, it was a symbol of Russia's glory. The church was destroyed by Stalin in 1931. He chose the site for his most ambitious project, a palace of Soviets. The building that was to become the highest in the world, to be topped with a huge statue of Lenin, bigger in size than the Statue of Liberty in New York, but the construction works, started in the 1930s, stopped because of the Second World War and were never resumed, as engineers realized that the foundation prepared would not be able to hold such a giant. Under the next leader, in early 60s, the foundation of the building was turned into a huge open-air swimming pool complex Moskva, which was very popular and existed till 1993. Everything changed in this country in 1990s. The pool was closed and the new Russian government decided to build the church anew, and so they did. It was finished and consecrated in August of 2000 as a new replica of the original church. Now the cathedral is a symbol of Russians' revival. The little pedestrian bridge across the Moskva River by the cathedral was opened a few years ago when a previous patriarch of Russia died, and it is dedicated to him. The bridge provides with scenic views of the center of Moscow. In the distance you can see the oldest part of the city, Moscow's Kremlin. Across the river to the right, the complex of red brick buildings was built in the middle of the 19th century as a chocolate factory. After the revolution, the factory was called Red October. Some 10 years ago, being in the area was smelling chocolate and sweets, but the factory moved out to another location, having merged with another big Moscow chocolate manufacturer. The factory buildings were converted into loft, contemporary art and photography center, and a very popular fashionable clubbing place. So now this is one of the most popular centers of the city's nightlife. There one can enjoy about 20 different restaurants, bars and nightclubs. Further down is an eye-catching monument, a man standing on a heap of ships. It is dedicated to 300th anniversary of Russian Navy, since Peter the Great is the founder of it. The monument in fact represents him. Behind the monument there is one of very popular public parks of central Moscow, Museum. It is known as a park of sculpture, where one can find a great number of sculptures and sculptural compositions by contemporary sculptors, as well as some of the most important Soviet-time monuments which used to decorate central squares, streets and buildings of the capital, but then removed and now are preserved in the park. Museum is adjacent to the plain-looking Soviet constructivism-style building, which is a part of National Russian Art Gallery named after Tretyakov. It exhibits the 20th century Russian art. We are at the Theatre Square. In front of you is the most famous theatre of the country, the Bolshoi. The theatre was founded in the middle of the 18th century as Big Emperor's Theatre. Its building was rebuilt 3 times, and the one you see dates back to the middle of the 19th century. Started as a drama theatre, it is now used only for opera and ballet performances. The name is translated as the Big, and it is big, especially compared to the one standing next door. The corner yellow and white building is Mali Drama Theatre, and this name is translated as small. All in all, there are 3 theatres in the Theatre Square. When looking to the right and up the street, you can see Lubyanka Square, famous for the notorious KGB, which is a dark yellow structure with a clock. Now it is called Federal Security Service. FSB. Moscow is unique. It is very different from all the other European capitals. From one hand, like nearly all ancient cities, it has radial circular planning. From the other hand, unlike the streets of Western towns, the main radial and circular avenues in Moscow are all impressively broad. Moscow is all eclectic. Styles and times are all mixed up, making it feel like a living, vibrant city, preserving its best, but changing and feeling very modern as well. The historical center is pretty well preserved, but do not expect to see very narrow streets with very old stone buildings there. There is no so-called old town in Moscow. Built mostly of wood before the 17th century, the city was swept by fires many times, and rebuilding it, people would build new buildings in new styles, making the streets wider for safety reasons. After its reconstruction some 7 years ago, St. Nicholas Street gained its popularity among both locals and Moscow guests. It nearly always has some nice illumination, because of which it feels like it is eternal Christmas there. Due to its proximity to Red Square, numerous cafes and bars, its beauty and its lights, the street turned out to be #1 fun zone during the World Cup. Despite a number of specially arranged official fun zones, most of the city guests preferred to hang in this street. So it was all packed 24 hours then. This little square is one of many pretty spots that we have in historical part. The fountain is the result of the big city's reconstruction that is still going on, making it more and more cozy and pedestrian friendly. The St. Elias Street is full of very interesting and really beautiful buildings with a plenty of impressive details. Most secular buildings of the historical center date back to the 18th and 19th centuries, with very few older exclusions, and here in St. Barbara Street we can find some very interesting examples. Romanov's Chambers, the place where the first of Romanov's dynasty, Michael Romanov, is believed to be born. This 4-storied structure is a good example of Russian medieval architecture, so-called terems, homes of wealthy boyars, people of the court, pretty decorative and high buildings, normally with a wooden upper part, which would traditionally have rooms for children. Now it is a museum illustrating the life of Moscow boyars. Another wonderful example is this 16th century structure with a wooden roof. It was granted to British merchants by Ivan the Terrible and was the first British embassy in Russia. Presently, it is a little museum dedicated to the development of economical relations between Russia and Great Britain. In the background is the newest park of the city, Zaryadye. It was developed on the spot where we had the second largest hotel in the world, Rossiya, which had the capacity of over 6,000 people. Built in the 1960s, it looked very plain and really out of place. So it was decided to tear it down, and finally this park appeared. The park was designed by a team of American landscape designers and reminds Skywalk Park in New York. Several typical Russian landscapes are represented here: a birch grove, a pine grove, meadows and brooks, and even some rocks. The park is designed so that 5 buildings that it has
are practically invisible. They house restaurants, rides, greenhouses, and even an ice cave. One of the famous things the park features is a floating bridge, which was specially arranged for the sake of new views and as a wonderful picture opportunity. The monumental building with the spire is residential. It is one of the Gothic-style skyscrapers built under Stalin. By the way, 2 buildings of the kind were built as residential, 2 more as hotels, the other 2 as ministries, and the biggest is the main building of Moscow State University. Stalin's idea was to have 8 buildings of the kind, since when they were all planned, the city was celebrating its 800th anniversary. So Stalin wanted to have 1 per each century of the city's development. Only 7 were finished then. Now we do have 8. The 8th one was finished in 2000 as an apartment building called Triumph Palace in the north of Moscow. The central part of the building has better planned and bigger size apartments, mostly overlooking the Kremlin. These apartments granted in the Soviet time to those who were a bit more equal than the others, high-positioned Communist Party bosses and celebrities professors. Across the river is the first city's power plant, built in the 1890s. In the distance there is a wonderful view to Moscow's Kremlin. In the late 12th century, the city of Moscow was as large as the area surrounded by that red brick wall. The total size of the Kremlin grounds is 27 acres. Coming off the park and walking up the hill, we reach the most iconic, the most beautiful and the most unusual church of the country, St. Basil's Cathedral. It was built by an order of Ivan the Terrible in the middle of the 16th century to commemorate total defeat of Mongol Tatar Khanate and the capture of its capital, the city of Kazan. It originally consisted of 9 little churches, each dedicated to a saint or a festival of a Russian Orthodox Church, on which day some victory of Russian army over Mongols took place during the long military interference of Mongol Tatars in Russian land, and was called by the name of the Central Church of Intercession, Intercession Cathedral. But then there lived a man, Basil, a fool for the God's sake. He was highly respected and strongly loved by all people for telling the truth, telling the fortune, for miracle working, and for healing people. Everybody knew where to find him. The man was always hanging around the cathedral, and when he finally died, a decision to bury him by the wall of the church was taken, and soon the 10th chapel was added to its walls to accommodate his shrine, and all people started calling the cathedral by his name. So now it is known all over the world as St. Basil's Cathedral, and its original name all but forgotten. Walking up to the hill, we come to Red Square and the Kremlin. The square is considered to be the 4th largest square in the world. It is bound by St. Basil's Cathedral at one end and the Historical Museum at the other end. One side of it is GUM shopping mall, and the other is the wall of the Kremlin. From Red Square you can see the most famous tower of the wall, the Savior's Tower. Out of 20 fortification towers, there are 4 possible with gates, and the Saviour's Tower is one of them. The tower has the most accurate clock of the country and chimes each quarter an hour. At midnight, having chimed 12, it plays a short part of the national anthem. At first, the wall was built when the settlement grew into a town. At the late 12th century, it was a wooden wall surrounding a little town of Moscow. In the 14th century, the wall was replaced by white limestone wall. In the 15th century, Moscow became the main city in Russia, and the first city's wall was rebuilt again, then by Italian architects and of red brick. Later, though, according to Russian architectural traditions, they started plastering and whitewashing it. So in the 16th century, it again became white. The red brick wall that you see today is the result of its reconstruction after Napoleonic War, during which it was badly damaged. People started calling this unique place the Kremlin when the city grew larger and only a prince of Moscow and people of his court remained living inside the first city's wall. So the word Kremlin means a fortified town within a larger town and a residence of power. It still preserved its original meaning. It is a well-guarded town having its own life, and this is the main residence of power of the country. The president of the country works here. Behind the wall, you see a yellow and white building with a black dome topped with a president's standard flag. This is where his office is. I say works, and I mean it. The president doesn't live in the Kremlin. His home is in the western part of Moscow suburbs. The red and black structure in front of the wall is Lenin's mausoleum. Inside is an embalmed body of Lenin, available for the visitors 5 days a week. The historical museum was built to become what it is. Its whole traces the history of Russia from the time before Christ till the late 19th century. GUM was built in the late 19th century as a huge shopping area with about 200 cells for wholesale and retail trade, all property lit and heated. Then it was simply called trade roads. After the revolution of 1917, it was used partially as a military museum, partially as communal apartments, and partially for trade. In the late 1950s, it was all turned into the largest department store of the country, and the name GUM is actually abbreviation of Russian translation of the words State Department Store. It neither belonged to the state nor is a department store anymore. In the 1990s, it experienced great changes and became a shopping mall, and abbreviation GUM is not used as its name. It is definitely worth seeing inside. Upon completion of GUM, the architectural ensemble of Red Square formed completely. It is beautiful, and this is what the name of the square means. Having appeared as a big marketplace by the city's wall in the 14th century, it kept changing its look and names. The square became red, that is beautiful, in the 16th century when St. Basil's Cathedral was built and wooden stalls of vendors were demolished. all people admired the changes coming to the square and kept saying how beautiful it was, and the name stuck. But in the old Russian, the word beautiful had two meanings, beautiful and red. In contemporary Russian language, only the meaning that stands for the color preserved. That's why nowadays the name of the square is translated as red, but it still means beautiful. Now you know, the main square of the country is not called red by the communists or by its dominating color, which is presently really red. It is the historical name of the place and it stands for its beauty. The shape of the Kremlin is an improper triangle. One side of it overlooks the Moskva River, another one faces Red Square, and the third one has a nice Alexander Garden. The garden was established in the first half of the 19th century. Before it, the little river Neglinka flew here. Being the mostly polluted in Moscow, the river was finally put into an underground pipe. By the wall you see a tomb of unknown soldier with guards of honor and the change of the guard spectacular ceremony. The garden is separated from the shopping mall by a cascade of water, which is an imitation of the Neglinka river and is nicely decorated with bronze statues representing the main characters of the most popular fairy tales.
Thank you for your attention. For me it was a great pleasure to be with you. We have shown you only a small part of Moscow's sights, so we are waiting for you here. Goodbye and see you in our capital.